We're going to go ahead and
Right.
get started. And I just wanted to take a minute to introduce Ryan to those of you who don't know him. So thank you for attending our first Lunch and Learn. And Ryan is a licensed certified public accountant in Tennessee and Georgia. And after working for a few firms in the Chattanooga area, he decided to start his own firm in August of 2019. Hood CPA and Associates has a team of 5 accountants, and they offer bookkeeping services, payroll services, assurance services, and tax services. On the home front, Ryan has 3 boys, Landon, who is 10, Jackson, who is 8, and Cooper, who is almost 2 years old. Ryan's wife, Rachel, is also a CPA, but refuses to work for him, which I think is hilarious. Derek Wers introduced Ryan to the SMA, and now he is a proud member of the association. So, Ryan, thank you so much for being here, imparting your wisdom on our crew, and take it away.
Yeah, it's good to see you guys. I'm looking through squares in a laptop that's about 8 inches. So if I look weird, sorry. This is the first one I've ever done like this, so this is kind of cool, but a little scary at the same time because I'm like, I wore a polo today. I'm usually in like my pajamas because I'm sitting at home. But anyways, I kind of, all these questions out there about the PPP loan and the EIDL and all these, payroll protection loans. I'm sure a lot of you guys have questions on that, but I wanted to start just by going over some things I found in the CARES Act that are unrelated to that, but seem to be pretty important when it comes to filing your taxes. So the first thing I just wanted to mention is, they extended the due date of your tax returns, if you didn't know, to July 15th. I get a lot of questions as of, should I go ahead and file? Or should I just wait, or is my tax due now, or can I file, so July 15th is the date that your tax return is due and the date that the payment is due for 2019. So you can go ahead and file your return if you want to. I would suggest just kind of holding out because there might be some new legislation that comes in that says you can take, some extra deductions here or there. I'm advising all my clients just to kind of sit tight for a second if you haven't filed. The only reason that I would say to file is because of these stimulus checks that are coming in. The last I heard, you're still getting $1,200 a person if you file below a single member. I think it's under 75,000, and then married filing jointly, it's 150. So if you're below that threshold for 2019, but you were above it for 2018, then you might want to go ahead and file so you can get that extra stimulus money. Do you guys have any questions on that piece of it, the stimulus check? No. Okay. So that's
Ryan, hold on just a second.
Okay.
Let me just kind of talk to you, since this is our first Lunch and Learn using Zoom. I just want to make sure people understand how to unmute themselves. I should have done that, pardon me. And so at the bottom left, there's a mute button, and most of you are muted, but if you'd like to ask a question, you can unmute by clicking that, or mute yourself again by clicking it back. If you don't have a microphone, you can also chat with us with the chat feature, which is at the bottom. And it's almost to the right. It's just right of center there. So if you have questions, please definitely ask. And one of the questions that we have from the chat is there any interest that is accrued if we wait?
As far as are you talking about interest that you'd have to pay, like interest or penalty, or are you talking about if you're getting a refund, do you get interest on that money? Because I would, as far as interest and penalty, there will be no interest and penalty if you wait to July to file. That's pretty much like saying it's due on April 15th. It's just due on July 15th.
So they've just pushed back the filing date. So there is no penalty that will be accrued.
Correct. And then they have also extended. So if you do quarterly payments, usually your first quarter is due in April. They've extended that to July also. The question that I've been getting a lot is, okay, well, what about your second quarter payment? So is your first and second quarter due July 15th? And what I'm recommending is just going ahead, if you have the cash, to pay your first and second quarter on July 15th, and then do your September, then your January. I don't think they're going to really penalize anybody for quarterly estimates this year. That's just my personal opinion. I haven't read anything that says otherwise, but as far as quarterly payments, I would just plan on making those July 15th also, because they've extended that past April 15th also. And they have, if you extend it July 15th, I'm hearing that they're going to still keep the extended due date for businesses September and personal in October. So they're not going to push all this extensions out into the 2021 year and then making us, lovely CPAs go through tax season, right after, 2020, then 2021. So I am hearing that October 15th is still the extension date if you extend past July. But, it is kind of I've heard a lot of clients say, well, I don't want to kind of, cheat the system. If I didn't make that money in 2018 and I did in 2019, then I'll just leave that money on the table. Some clients are like, no, if they're going to give it to me, I'm going to take it. So, you probably just want to talk to your CPA about it, because I did have a client that fell in a situation where they didn't make as much money in 2018, but then they went over that amount for 2019. So they decided, they're like, well, I'm not going to file my 2019. I'll let them go off my 2018 tax return so I can get the stimulus money. So that, and then another thing that I read is under the last Trump law, they mess with your NOLs, so your net operating losses. So if you had a loss, they made it to where you couldn't go back and take the losses anymore. And if you rolled it forward, you could only take 80%. So now under the CARES Act, they've completely eliminated that. So you can go back now. If you have a loss for 2019, 2020, you can go back 5 years. So if this does affect you in a bad way to where you have a big loss, you can now go back 5 years to take up any income and get a refund. So that was one thing that I saw that was kind of hidden in there. I also saw that qualified improvement property, they mentioned that they made a mistake on the last regulation. And so now they were allowing qualified improvement property to include interior. So if you own, non-residential property and you make improvements inside of the property, that's allowed to be 100% bonus depreciated, which could be a big deal instead of having to depreciate it over 39 years. So that's one little thing that was tucked in there. Some of my clients, they always ask the question, can I hire my kid to come work at my business? And so there's all kinds of employer guidelines that you got to follow. And so you want to test that. But one thing I saw in the CARES Act in the new law is that you can pay up to $5,250 annually for any employees for their student loan. So a lot of people might hire their kid that's 17, 18, pay them under the threshold to where they don't have to file their tax return. And so now they're saying you can pay up to $5,200 to their college institution tax-free. So in other words, the business can get the deduction and then they don't have to report that on their income. Also, on IRA distributions, they are now forgiving the 10% penalty to up to $100,000 withdrawal. So if you need to take money out of your IRA for this, you don't have to pay the 10% penalty anymore. I did see that they also are not requiring those RMDs, so your required minimum distributions. They're waiving those also. So if you got questions on that kind of stuff, I'd contact your financial advisor just to get confirmation on that. But that's in the language of the CARES Act, is that they waive those. One other thing are the charitable contributions. In the past, the last Trump legislation, he made it 60% of your AGI, which was a 10% bump up. So you can only take 60% of a deduction up to your AGI. So there's a long calculation to figure that out. But long story short, they've eliminated that. So there's not any sort of restrictions on your charitable contributions. And if you actually don't itemize and you take the standard deduction, they're letting you take an extra $300 to your standard deduction for charitable contributions. So, you know, if you fall in that like 25% bracket, then you're saving $75. So it's an extra deduction out there. And then let's see, there's a lot of legislation out there with the payroll taxes. Has anybody dealt with that as far as the payroll taxes and having to lay people off because they've been affected by this? And has anybody dealt with that? No, because what I'm hearing is that if you do decide to go down this route with your payroll taxes, then you can't get the money from the PPP loan grant, as they're calling it. So they're coming out with stuff. I mean, they're probably changing something as we speak right now. But I mean, there's a lot of can't dip it. You know, you can't take this loan if you take that one, and if you take advantage of the payroll tax credit, then you can't take the PPP loan. So, you know, before you dive into this stuff, you might want to talk to your accountant. I would talk to your banker. I'd also maybe contact an unemployment attorney, because I've got a lot of questions on unemployment. You know, can you get unemployment and you get these loans also? I'm hearing yes, that you can draw unemployment and get these loans. So there's a lot of stuff out there. There's a lot of rumors out there. A lot of people are Googling, but I mean, I'm just telling you from my experience of dealing with this, kind of what I'm seeing. So, you know, you might want to, as I'm saying this, jot it down and maybe run this past your banker, run it past an attorney also. Don't just say Ryan from Chattanooga told me this, and so I'm gonna hold him liable for it. But anyway, so that's kind of what I'm seeing. That's outside of all of the grants and the loans that are out there with the PPP and the EIDL. So those are just some little things they threw in there. Like I said, I think that there's going to be some more tax breaks that come out there, and then they're going to cream us next year. I mean, that's just that's my, there's no free money as long as I've been around. But anyway, so then I just kind of wanted to start. If you want to, Tara, do you want to go over these chat questions before I move on to the grants?
Yes, I think that would be great. So we have a question that says, can you break down the grant side of things?
The grant side as far as the PPP and the EIDL? Yeah, I'll dive into that. I was just gonna see if there's any questions on this other stuff before I moved on to the EIDL and the PPP.
Okay. That's the only question I'm seeing. The other one we answered. He said, okay. God, thank you. If you are on a phone, if you're joining us from a phone and you're muted, you can hit *6 to unmute yourself. So again, if you're calling from a phone and you have a question and you're muted, you can simply hit *6 and that will unmute you so that you can ask questions. And then you just hit *6 again to mute yourself back.
Gotcha.
So go ahead, Ryan.
Okay, good deal. So the first loan I wanted to mention, well, we'll call them loans. We'll call them loans and grants. So because it's either a grant or it's a loan, depending on certain instances. So I'm going to try to go over that the best I can. So the first loan that they put out there was this EIDL, which is I think Economic Impact Disaster Loan. So this came through straight from the government's website at sba.gov. I'll tell you from my personal experience, I applied for it 3 weeks ago because I knew that a lot of questions were going to come through it. So I wanted to go through it myself. I applied for it, and I think, it was 3 weeks ago, and it was a pretty extensive application. And then I noticed that they changed it, and they started saying you could put a $10,000, pretty much a $10,000 emergency money into your bank account right then. So when I went back to check on my application status, the whole thing had changed, and it was a very short, tell me your gross revenues, tell me your cost of sales, and tell me how many employees you had. There was no question on what your payroll was. Give me support, give me 940s, give me something. I haven't been asked anything as far as give me some support. I haven't seen $10,000 go into my bank account. So I keep hearing 4 to 6 weeks. I heard 72 hours. Last I heard was 4 to 6 weeks. So only thing I have heard from that application is I got an email saying that my application had moved to in review. That's all I've seen from that one. So from what my understanding is, this loan was used to cover payroll, utilities, rent, and then interest on any debt that you had. So that's, I went on there and I checked all the boxes. Well, then this PPP loan comes out and they're going to start offering the PPP loan through your financial institution. And so that obviously, as y'all know, that created quite a stir with questions and, well, can I get the EIDL and the PPP? And, so my understanding is you can apply for both of these loans or grants. And so you can apply through all this and just kind of see see what happens. I know you cannot double dip into both of these grants, loans. You can't use the EIDL and the PPP to pay for your payroll. Talking to a couple of banks in our area, they're advising, that you apply for both and then you use the EIDL money if it ever comes. You just set up an account, pay your rent, pay your utilities out of that account, and then use it that way. And then the PPP, which I'm going to talk about next, just use that one for your payroll. So go through your financial institution, set up a payroll account. When they fund that money, just fund that straight to your payroll account, and then just run your payroll through there for the 8 weeks after that. And that's what I'm understanding is the correct way to do it. I actually offered, we go through ADP. So I was like, well, just send it to them. Like that way there's no questions and, this whole thing will be forgivable. But the PPP loan through your financial institution, I've heard that it varies on what bank that you use. I've talked to numerous bankers and I've heard we're not offering them. We're just not even going to touch it. And then I've had some that's like, yeah, send me and I'll get you approved within 48 hours. So I go through a local bank and mine supposedly got approved last night. And it was actually within 48 hours. So that's, you want to talk to your banker. And I am hearing that if you don't have accounts already set up with that bank or you don't have a loan in place, that they're not going to take you unless you move all your stuff over to that bank. So I think the bankers are getting really, they're getting really kind of picky about who they're doing these loans for. And they obviously want to have your business along with it, which is a good opportunity for some lenders. I know some of the bigger banks like Bank of America, I forgot, there's a couple more here in town that I'm hearing that they just opened up their applications like 2 nights ago. And I will tell you, like, be careful paying for someone to fill out these applications for you, because I have a feeling that there's a lot of disclosures and a lot of things that are going to kind of, and it's not hard to apply for these things. Like you just go on there and they literally just want some payroll reports and your bank will help walk you through it. I have seen a lot of people out there trying to charge for these. And so it's just kind of, I just wanted to throw that out there. But, from what I'm understanding, in order for it not to be a loan, you absolutely have to use it for payroll. So, the question I keep getting is, well, if I put this money in a payroll account and then I obviously use my operating money for everything, are they going to want to kind of do an audit of me, when it comes time for me to pay this loan? And, I that's something I don't know. I don't know what they're going to decide, how they're going to keep everyone in compliance with if you use it on payroll. I would recommend just opening that payroll account, leaving it in the payroll account, and that's all you do is pay your payroll for the next 8 weeks. I've heard, can I give myself a raise once I get this money? And I'm like, no, I would not do that. I would at least not do it for the 8-week period after you have the money. But I mean, I did have a client that he's like, well, I've had to lay people off and now I'm having to do their job. So I want to give myself a little bump. So I just told him I'd be conservative as possible with it, because, now they're saying if it turns into a loan that they're making it a 2-year loan at 1%. So, the payments on that, if you get a huge, you get a huge amount, that's going to be, that could be a deal breaker. but yeah, so then, the PPP loans, they're, depending on what financial institution that you go through, they're pretty easy to fill out. I'll just go ahead and tell you what they're going to want. They're going to want your payroll summary for 2019. They're going to want your average monthly payroll for 2019. And then they're going to want your payroll summary from January of 20 to February 15th of 2020. And then you take your monthly average and you times it by 2.5. And my understanding is that's the max amount of the PPP loan that you can get and that can be forgivable. So that's everything that I'm seeing on those. I'm trying to think.
Ryan, real quick. Doug West has a question, so he has his hand raised, which is a really cool feature of Zoom too. So, okay. Doug, go ahead.
So my reference source for information is the U.S. Treasury, the U.S. Department of Treasury, and the section is Assistance for Small Businesses. Mm-hmm. And they discuss specifically filling out the application for the PPP. And one of the things that occurs is the person who completes the application can be paid 1% of the loan amount for doing that work, and the money comes from the lender, not from the company, doesn't affect the loan amount, it's separate. My take on that is I'm not the business owner, employee, and it does say that an employee can fill it out, and the payment for filling it out will be 1% of the loan amount, and I will receive that money from the lender, not my employer. Does that sound accurate to you?
Yeah, that sounds accurate. Yeah. Yeah, I know when you go and fill it out for the EIDL, they make you disclose if you're filling it out for somebody and the fee that you're getting for it. So I just know how that goes in other things that, like CPAs receive fees for referrals. And I just know that the disclosures are pretty heavy. And so then the accountant will then charge you for the extra 3 hours that they got to put those disclosures in there. So that's just.
For me, it was a way for me to capture more money coming in from the feds. That's my take on it.
Yeah. No, but that's accurate. Yeah. So I did hear that there's a 1% of the loan amount that will be pretty much given back to the employer.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sarah?
Yes, Bob.
How did he put his hand up? How do you do that?
Sure.
What's that? He was cutting out.
He wants to know how to raise your hand. So let me find it. So if you click on, so you see yourself, and in the top right corner, you should be able to raise your hand. Do you see that?
Audio reading. Good. No, that's okay. I didn't get it. I did have a comment about this.
We'll do it a different way then. So to raise your hand, go to the chat.
I typed in the chat.
Oh, sorry. Nope. Chat is at the very bottom.
Yeah.
Right of center. So in the chat, you can see raise hand at the bottom left.
Just wanted to give a little bit of input. Can you hear me?
You're cutting out like this morning.
Okay. I wrote in the chat.
Okay.
I don't know if you can see it.
Let me go find you. Bob, I'm going to chat with you. I don't see a message, so I'm going to start it, and then you can click on chat and it will be green or orange, I mean, and then you'll be able to type in your question there. And while you do that, is there anyone else that has questions about what Ryan has talked about thus far? Again, if you're joining us from a phone and you have a question, you can simply hit *6 and that will unmute you.
Has anybody received anything through this? Like has anybody received a stimulus check or an approval from the bank or anything from the EIDL? Because I haven't. I've heard I had one client that received $1,200 in their bank account for the stimulus check. That's the only thing I've heard of anybody getting anything up to this point. Anxious to hear if somebody has.
No, I got it. Thank you.
Has gotten anything.
We filled out our paperwork last Friday and gave it to our banker, but we have not heard anything back. They was the bank was going to review it over the weekend, but we have not heard anything.
That's what I keep hearing. I hear that the banks are pushing back. You know, they got it to change it from 10-year payback to 2 years. And so I'm anxious to hear if anybody's actually gotten approved and actually gotten money in an account, because I still haven't read anything online that's like a client testimonial or anything, saying, this has happened and this is great, or I just haven't heard anything. I'd be, if you guys do, throw it out there to me just so I can know and know something is happening, because I haven't seen anything. I mean, I know it feels like it's been like 2 years since this thing happened and it's only been a couple weeks, but especially when you got 3 kids in the house, it feels like it's been 6 years since this thing's happened. But yeah, I mean, that's pretty much, that sums up everything that I'm hearing, about these grants. And like I said, I don't believe that there's ever free money. I do believe that next year we're going to get hit with probably a 10% tax increase across every bracket, for them to try to get back this $2 trillion or, all this money. Because, I mean, some of my clients are, they're asking, their payroll is pretty hefty, and you guys' payroll is pretty hefty. So I can't imagine, my client base, there's a $300,000 loan, all across the country. How many people are applying for this thing? it's got to be outrageous. So I can't imagine that they're not going to try to get this back somehow. So I would just, just to kind of summarize and to close it up, I would definitely take advantage of this. I would apply for it. Definitely talk to your banker and see if your bank, who you bank with, offers they're an SBA approved lender. If they're not, and don't have close ties to that bank, I'd go find one that does. I know that there's a lot of uncertainty out there, but I would say if it's there to grab, that's what I'm advising, is just to go get it. I mean, you don't know how, if you're not affected by it now, you might be affected by it in May, June, July, August. I mean, so I think it's definitely worth going out there and applying for and seeing what you can get. And I would recommend going on the SBA and if you haven't done that, fill that one out also, and see if you hear anything back from it. But
Ryan, I have some feedback for you regarding that. My local bank actually revealed some numbers to me. They had, and it's a small bank, they probably have 24 small New Jersey branches. They had 50,000 applications. They are only processing 2,000. Wow. That's the magnitude of application versus what they can handle. I'm an existing customer of theirs. I'm one of the lucky 2,000 applicants that they are processing. And that's where we stand today.
So is that, do you know if the other that didn't get processed, was it because they didn't, like, they didn't have did they get denied, or is it just like we're only picking 2,000 out of all these applicants? Like, was there a reason that they didn't get picked, or?
The majority of the reason they did not get picked was because they were not existing customers. So they bounced those other 48,000 applicants to another little bank that they just acquired within the last 6 months or so.
Yeah.
But the feedback was important to me because it gives us a feel for magnitude of what's occurring in the real world. And you can take that information and run with it. Now, I did hear through somebody I don't know personally, I didn't speak to them directly, they got some money. They got about 300 grand. But they applied a good 3 weeks ago through SBA directly.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know any more than that. I don't know if it's true or it's just internet. Who knows what it is.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I did want to, throw out there too. I know a lot of questions I'm getting is, do you include independent contractors in your payroll? And that answer is no. So independent contractors and self-employed individuals can apply this Friday, from what I'm hearing, through your financial institution. So, I don't know if you have a lot of independent contractors that you pay, but they're going to be able to go out and apply for this loan through their bank. And I think it opens up on the 10th, which is Friday. So you may, if you know anybody that's that way, you may want to pass along that information to them. Just because, that's what my questions, because I got a lot of small business clients. It's like, I got a plumber, like a limo driver, and they're like, well, I don't have any employees, so how can I apply for this loan? And so they did come out and say, we're going to assist those individuals so they can apply on the 10th. As far as the calculation for those guys, what they're going to go on, I think they're just going to go on whatever the was for 2019. So that's one thing when you're filling out your payroll. Don't put your independent contractors on there, your 1099s.
Ryan, I don't know if you can hear me or not. I tried to chat. I'm not sure that it went through. A couple things that I wanted to. You able to hear me?
Yeah, it's kind of choppy, but I got you.
Sorry about that. A couple things that our accountant has done. We've submitted all our paperwork. We deal with a small local bank that knows our business very well. We've done business with them for a lot of years, which is a great benefit. But dealing with the accountant, one thing that he told us is very important. He said, when you get this money, to open a separate account, do separate documentation, set up an Excel spreadsheet, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
He said, document very well every penny where this goes. He suggested that once a week you write a check for that payroll, the exact amount of the payroll out of that account. Therefore, you're easy to track exactly where that goes. Because, like you said, dust settles with all this. It's going to be those who have good tracking that are going to have the best luck with forgiveness of the loan part. But if you don't have good tracking for it, then you're going to end up paying as a loan.
Right.
So, good advice to keep a separate account, put it into, and track it that way. So then they help some people.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're exactly right. I think you're going to have your own payroll account set up, and you don't want to commingle it with your operating account, because then they're, like I said, they may come in and just do a full-blown audit of everything, and you don't want the headache of doing that. So yeah, the more support that you use that money for payroll, that would be the best. That would be the best thing to do.
Thank you for all the information. Very good.
Yeah.
Appreciate your time.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you have any, I have some graphs and some, I'm more of a visual person. So I got a lot of charts that compares, the PPP to the EIDL. So if you're interested in any of that material, just reach out to Tara, and let her know, and I can send it through her or send it to you guys directly. So if you want, and if any new guidance comes up, I'll be glad to pass all that along to you guys. So I'll communicate through Tara, but if you are interested in those graphs, let her know, and I'll be glad to shoot them to her, and she can get it out to you guys. And I do got some Rockies Cardinals tickets on April the 15th, if you guys know of anybody that wants to buy them, since we're not going to get to go to that conference.
Oh, such a bummer.
I was like, they said that they would refund it if it got canceled, but they didn't cancel it. They rescheduled it. So I guess I'm going to have to figure out when that game is and go out to Colorado and watch.
Denver.
Yeah. So if anybody wants to go, just let me know. I got some tickets, but yeah, thanks for your time. And hang in there. I know this is a crazy, difficult time, but I'll be glad to help you guys as much as I can.
Awesome. Ryan, thank you so much for your time.